What if I told you that the First World War, the deadliest conflict of its time, wasn't sparked overnight, but was the result of decades of betrayal, paranoia, and secret deals? A chain of grudges stretching back to a single war in 1870. A war that changed Europe forever. In the summer of 1870, France declared war on Prussia. Many French leaders believed it would be a short, glorious campaign that would restore their pride and expand their influence. But the reality was very different. The French army was crushed. German forces marched all the way to Paris, surrounding the city and forcing a humiliating surrender. The proud empire of Napoleon III collapsed almost overnight. And in its place, a new power rose, the German Empire. And before we move forward, a quick reminder, if you're enjoying this journey through history, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. That way, you won't miss the next chapter of this incredible story. The peace terms that followed were devastating. France was forced to pay an enormous sum in reparations, but money was not the worst loss. Far more painful was the seizure of Alsace and Lorraine, provinces filled with history, culture, and industry. For the French, this was more than territory. It was a piece of their national soul. Schools printed maps with the missing provinces, outlined in black, a reminder to every child that the nation had been wounded. From that moment on, a burning desire for revenge became central to French identity. Foreign policy in Paris now had a single focus: contain Germany. If France could not stand alone, then allies had to be found. And though it seemed unlikely at first, France began to look eastward, toward Tsarist Russia. But while France searched for friends abroad, its politics at home were boiling with tension. Monarchists, Bonapartists, and Republicans fought bitterly. Over the country's future, secular leaders clashed with the Catholic Church, and even schools became battlegrounds for ideology. France was unstable, its people restless, in this atmosphere of uncertainty. A new figure captured the public imagination: General Georges Boulanger. Charismatic and fiercely nationalist, he became known as General Revenge, the man who would finally take France back to war with Germany. He ordered fortresses built near the border, banned German products, and even rejected German music in theaters. Ordinary citizens cheered him on, believing he would restore French honor. But when the opportunity for power came, Boulanger hesitated. Instead of striking boldly, he lost his nerve. His enemies moved against him, and in exile, broken and defeated, he ended his life. His dramatic fall from grace left France more divided than ever. The desire for revenge remained, but the path to it was unclear. Only a few years later, France was shaken by a scandal that exposed deep cracks in its society: the Dreyfus Affair. In 1894, a secret document suggested that someone in the army was spying for Germany. Suspicion fell on Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish officer from Alsace. With little real evidence, he was convicted of treason and sent to the prison colony of Devil's Island, a remote and brutal place. The truth, however, was very different. The real spy was another officer, but the army refused to admit its mistake. Anti-Semitic prejudice, corruption, and a desperate attempt to protect military honor all combined to keep Dreyfus behind bars. The case split France in two. When the famous writer Émile Zola published his open letter, J'accuse, accusing the government and military of a cover-up, the country erupted. Intellectuals, artists, politicians, and ordinary people lined up on opposing sides. Some demanded justice. For Dreyfus, while others saw criticism of the army as an attack on the nation itself. At times, the conflict threatened to tear France apart. Eventually, the truth came out. The evidence against Dreyfus had been forged. After years of suffering in exile, he was freed, reinstated into the army, and even went on to fight bravely at Verdun during the First World War, yet the damage was done. The Dreyfus Affair left scars that would not heal, deepening mistrust between the military and civilians, between church and state, between left and right. While France wrestled with these divisions, the great powers of Europe were turning their eyes abroad. Africa became the stage for a dramatic race for empire. Vast regions that had once been blank spaces on European maps were suddenly being claimed, divided, and fought over. Britain, France, Germany, Belgium, and Portugal all joined the scramble. Germany, once uninterested in colonies, suddenly leaped into the competition, seizing territories in Africa and declaring them protectorates. Britain pushed further into Egypt, and Sudan, determined to control the Nile and protect the route to India. France, expanding through West Africa, clashed with Britain again and again. The tension reached its peak in 1898 at the small town of Fashoda in Sudan. French and British forces met there, each determined not to back down. For days, the world watched, expecting war. But instead of fighting, the commanders waited, exchanged polite gestures, and even shared whiskey. Eventually, Paris backed down, and Britain claimed victory. The humiliation burned in France, but it also led to a new realization. Constant rivalry with Britain only weakened both nations, while Germany continued to grow stronger. So, in 1904, something remarkable happened. Britain and France, after centuries of hostility, signed the Entente Cordiale. France accepted Britain's control in Egypt, while Britain recognized French rights in Morocco. It was more than a treaty, it was the beginning of a partnership that would shape the coming century. The next step was Russia. For decades, Britain and Russia had been bitter rivals, clashing in Asia over influence in Persia, Afghanistan, and Tibet. But after Russia's crushing defeat in the War of 1905, the Tsar's empire was weakened and isolated. Revolution shook the streets of St. Petersburg. The Russians needed allies. By 1907, Britain and Russia put aside their differences, settling their disputes in Asia and opening the door to cooperation. With that, the Triple Entente was born. Britain, France, and Russia united in a loose but powerful understanding. Meanwhile, across the continent, Germany watched with growing suspicion and alarm. Born out of the Franco-Prussian War, the German Empire had become the strongest power in Europe, industrial, modern, and heavily armed. But instead of finding itself respected and secure, Germany saw itself encircled. France to the west, Russia to the east, and Britain controlling the seas. The sense of threat and paranoia pushed Germany to strengthen its military even further. Naval expansion challenged Britain. Army buildups threatened France and Russia. Colonial ambitions added more fuel to the fire. By the early years of the 20th century, Europe was a continent on edge. Colonial rivalries, spy scandals, nationalist movements, and massive military preparations had created a dangerous balance. Each country armed itself, each alliance deepened, and each side prepared for the possibility of war. The world stood like a powder keg ready to explode with the smallest spark. By 1914, the alliances were set, the rivalries hardened, and the grudges too deep to ignore. All it would take was one gunshot, one spark and the world would plunge into the Great War. But before we reach Sarajevo, we must understand, this war began long before the first bullet was fired. And if you don't want to miss the next episode of this story, make sure you subscribe and press the bell icon. It really helps the channel and keeps you connected to history.